Hi, I'm Elsie, and welcome to this episode of No Filter with Kobo. We decided to shake things up a bit, so I will be hosting this episode from start to finish. Today, we're diving into makeup for the face, foundations, blushes, and everything in between. We'll cover what makes a great face product, key ingredients to consider, and some tips from the formulation world. Let's get started with Nick Quinteros, one of Kobo's very experienced formulators in our US applications lab. Immediately after, we'll hear from another formulation expert, Urmi Dhamnaskar, from our applications lab in the UK. She will answer questions on her Squishy Putty Blush, which is our formula of the month. Hi, Nick. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, Elsie.
To kick things off, Nick, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Nick Quinteros. I work in the Kobo app lab as a senior chemist. I've been at Kobo for about 6 months now, but before this, I was at Coty for close to 7 years, where I was working on product development as well as upstream innovation for face and eye makeup.
Thank you for sharing, Nick. To get things rolling, I love to start with a question about face makeup. What do you think are the most important factors that make a product truly great?
So there are a lot of face products on the market. And I think the way that they are differentiated and what customers really like is more the skin feel. How does it feel on the skin? As well as how does the color look on the skin? Our face is very sensitive, like, different parts of our body to different textures and consistencies. So you want to make sure that it has a really nice feel, doesn't feel too heavy, doesn't feel too draggy, because that will, make or break your product. It's also really important that the color in the bottle is the color that you get on your skin, otherwise known as color trueness. Because again, trying to match that color to your skin is already very difficult. And it's even more of a challenge if it's drying over time.
Absolutely, Nick. That makes a lot of sense. Skin feel and color accuracy really make or break a product for the consumer. So I'm curious, how do consumers' expectations like long wear, natural finish, or skin benefits influence the way face products are developed?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge with all of these new expectations and wants from their products. As a formulator, you really have to learn new materials, new techniques, things like that. I recently worked on a face product that we wanted to achieve 24 plus hours of wear. So I had to work with different chemists, especially like on the work in lipsticks, in order to understand what materials they are using to get 24-hour wear while also being comfortable. Because, like I said, skin feel is important. So using those products from those lipsticks, I was able to get something that was long wearing, but also very flexible on the face.
Well, that's really cool. It's great to hear that these challenges push you to get creative and even borrow ingredients from other categories. I love the example of needing a 24-hour wear and discovering materials from lip products that end up working perfectly in a foundation. So, thinking about that, what are some of the must have ingredients in foundations or other face products that really drive performance?
I think we're seeing almost an entire industry shifting towards what some companies call skinification of color cosmetics. So it's really becoming a standard practice to have some kind of a skincare ingredient in your formula. Things like hyaluronic acid, niacinamide, and ceramides are becoming more and more popular. And common ingredients like glycerin are almost expected in a formula just because of how well it performs to moisturize your skin. Whenever I'm looking at the market to see what's launching, I'm always seeing different ingredients being highlighted, like bioferments, extracts from algae, vegetable, different plants, and other, new skincare ingredients right on the front label.
That's so interesting. I love seeing how color cosmetics are becoming more skinified. And it's so cool how new products keep bringing in functional ingredients to boost performance. So, now building on that, how do you approach balancing coverage, texture, and comfort in a formula?
Yeah, it can definitely be difficult to try to hit all three of those benefits in the same formula, especially because they can easily contradict each other. So, to achieve that high coverage, you typically want to increase your total pigment load, but iron oxides and titanium dioxide that we use to get that coverage are also known to be very heavy. So, it's definitely a challenge to try to get that coverage without compromising on your comfort. So, really, the way that you want to go about that is to make your pigments more efficient rather than trying to increase them. So making sure that you're choosing a treated pigment that's compatible with your system, or using some kind of pigment wetter or dispersant will help to increase your coverage with the lower level of pigment. It's also important just to include different texturizing materials, different powders, gums, and gels to give you that unique sensorial aspect to almost cover that, negative benefit from your pigments, just so that you can get that really comfortable feel that lasts all day.
Great information, Nick. That's very insightful. I love how tweaking pigment efficiency and adding things like texturizing powders or gels can make such a big difference in both performance and how the product feels on the skin. With those factors in play for face makeup, what makes the difference between a product that looks flat versus one that gives a healthy dimensional glow?
So there's a couple ways that you can achieve that healthy radiant look and kind of, tone down the flat, dull appearance. The easiest way is just with special effect pigments or pearls. Even at low levels, a percent or two can be enough to give you a very subtle shimmer or glow without compromising your formula. The second way is a little bit more involved, and you can get some stability issues, but that would be to explore different solvents and oils. So looking at things that are very high refractive index, such as phenyltrimethicone or isopropyl isostearate, amongst other emollients, they will give you that high shine, high radiance look. You can also use different polymers like Lustplan DDDA5. That would be a high refractive index polymer that also gives you that glossy look. However, it is a little bit on the heavier side, so you don't want to use too much or else you will feel it on the skin and it'll be a little bit uncomfortable.
Thanks, Nick. That's eye opening. How even just a small amount of special effect pigment can add that subtle glow, and how choosing the right emollients for high refractive index materials can make a product look radiant without feeling heavy. It's all about finding that perfect balance, right? And so now, keeping that in perspective, what innovations in pigments or raw materials are exciting you most in the face makeup category right now?
I've been very excited to see more and more naturally derived non microplastic texture modifiers being released. In the past, a lot of oil soluble texture modifiers were considered microplastic, so would have restrictions in certain regions, synthetically derived, and not nice to see on your ingredient list. But now we're seeing a lot more natural non-microplastic texture modifiers that are derived from ingredients like castor oil that help tremendously to create these unique textures and different sensorial feels without having the ugly ingredient list.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's encouraging to see these kinds of innovations coming through. For example, like you said, the castor oil derived modifiers give formulators more room to create modern textures that consumers enjoy while keeping that label looking clean. Given all of this, let's talk about the bigger picture. How are brands responding to consumer interest in cleaner labels, sustainability, or skin friendly actives within the color cosmetics?
I think brands are definitely very receptive to most consumer interests, especially around that clean, sustainable formula. But it can be a challenge to maintain the same aesthetic, especially in an existing formula that you're trying to make clean and sustainable, while also making sure that the price stays the same as the previous version. So it's definitely a balancing act of how much can we make it clean and sustainable while also making sure that it's affordable so the consumer will want to continue to buy that product.
That makes a lot of sense. We both know that consumers want it all, but they don't always realize the trade offs behind the scenes. Balancing cleaner labels, sustainability, aesthetics, and cost is definitely no small task. On a related note, I'd love your thoughts on multifunctional products. Do you think multifunctional products like foundation with SPF or blush with skincare benefits are becoming the new standard?
Absolutely. I think multifunctional products have been trending for quite a while now. And it makes sense because we are always trying to save time. We want a shorter makeup routine or a skincare routine, and we also want to save money. So if we can find a product that replaces two or more products, there's definitely a lot of demand for that.
I completely agree. Multifunctional products really do offer both the convenience and value, which is why it does make sense that demand will keep growing. So, now shifting gears a bit, let's talk about inclusivity. What are the biggest challenges formulators face when creating inclusive shade ranges for face makeup?
I think color shift is definitely the number one challenge when it comes to creating inclusive shades. Like I mentioned before, color trueness is very important to the consumer and it's just as important to the formulator. Trying to create these shade ranges can be very time consuming and it takes even longer if we need to evaluate the formula when it's wet as well as when it's dry to see what that color shift is. So trying to mitigate that color shift as much as possible is definitely important. So like I said, choosing the right treated pigment or pigment dispersion that matches your formula is very important so that you're not spending as much time trying to shade match. The second biggest challenge is also just trying to achieve different undertones, especially in the deeper shade range. Trying to get cool tones can be a bit of a challenge since we traditionally use titanium dioxide for our white pigment, along with yellow, red, and black iron oxides. But in order to achieve those cool undertones, you need to introduce a lot more green and blue into the formula, which is very difficult since yellow and red are considered our warm tones. I've seen a few brands that have been using ultramarine blue and chromium green in their face makeup, but I don't think it's as common as it should be.
That's a great explanation. Color shift and undertones are huge hurdles when working toward truly inclusive shade ranges. I like your point about using pigments like ultramarine blue or chromium green. It feels like there's a lot of opportunities for more brands to adopt those approaches. To wrap up, let's move into my last question for you. How do you see textures evolving? Are we moving toward balmy, serum like finishes, or will powders always have their place?
I think we're already seeing and will likely continue to see a demand for more textures in face products and kind of a shift away from that traditional fluid product or even some powders. And I think this is mainly just because the definition of beauty is always changing. It used to be that beauty was physical appearance, but now it's, how do we feel? What emotions does this, give us? So definitely we want products that are unique textures because we want to experience some kind of sensorial feel or pull out some emotion. So definitely seeing different smells and fragrances, different textures for different skin I feel is becoming important.
That's such a thoughtful perspective, Nick. It's true that the definition of beauty continues to evolve, and that's shaping not only how products perform, but also how they feel and connect emotionally with the consumer. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great getting to talk about face products with you.
Thanks again, Nick. So now we're going to shift gears a bit. I'm excited to welcome back a familiar voice on the podcast, Urmi Dhamnaskar, who will be walking us through our formula of the month, a blush, KBL-045-EU Squishy Putty Blush, and answering a few questions about it. Hi, Urmi.
Hi, Elsie.
So let's get the ball rolling. Here's my first question. What inspired the idea behind a squishy putty blush, and how does it differ from traditional pressed or cream blushes?
So, in the UK App Lab, we wanted to make a nice blush formula, and we came across this product from MAC called the Glow Play Blush, which has a playable, squishy tight texture. So, we used it as a benchmark and made KBL-045-EU, the Squishy Putty Blush, using key ingredients from Kobo's portfolio. The texture is very different from the traditionally pressed or cream blushes. This blush formula feels almost like Play-Doh, where you can squish it and apply it to your skin.
That's really fun. The squishy texture makes it stand out from regular blushes. The formula card says that it gives a blurry pop of color. How does it achieve that effect on the skin?
We get that blurry effect from MSS 500W, which is our silica microsphere of average particle size 12 microns. And this silica helps us to impart that soft focus effect and gives us the blurry pop of color.
Got it. So the silica microsphere is doing the work to give that soft focus blurred effect on the skin. Looking at the key ingredients, I did notice that MSS 500W and Mica SMS2 are both highlighted as key powders in this formula. How do these work together to create that unique texture?
MSS 500W, along with the soft focus effect, also provides a rollerball effect, which helps us to spread the formula a bit better on the skin. And Mica SMS2 has a flat and smooth surface, which improves the slip in the texture and imparts a firmness in the formula. There is also a menthicone treatment on this mica, which gives good skin adhesion. And together, these two powders absorb the liquid emollients and create a soft yet firm, pliable type unique texture.
That's a good explanation. I like how the silica and the mica complement each other together. They really build that soft, dough-like texture that makes the blush so distinctive. Moving into the color side of things, why were the INBP dispersions chosen for the color phase, and how do they help with consistency across batches?
Dispersions are always my favorite to use in any formula as they simplify the process of manufacturing. In our dispersions, we use surface treated pigments which help us to make a dispersion of high pigment load because the bulk density of the pigment reduces and you can pack in more pigment in the dispersion. And the particle size range of our dispersions also stays precise as we use our advanced dispersion technology, and there's no reagglomeration of the pigments from lot to lot and over time. This really helps with color development and consistency across all batches.
That's helpful. Dispersions make it so much easier to keep the color consistent. I've got to ask, from a sensory side, what was the trickiest part of making this blush feel so fun and squishy like putty, but still perform like a serious product?
So, when I started working on the formula, I gradually started increasing the powder little by little to get the texture that we aimed for. There were some formula trials which were very soft and wet, while others felt too stiff or too dry. So the biggest challenge here was to find the ratio, the perfect ratio between solid powders, that is MSS500W and mica SMS2, and the liquid emollients. Having a squishy putty texture along with payoff or color release was very important here. And I think that was very challenging to find that balance.
That's really neat. It sounds like finding the right mix of powders and emollients was the secret to that fun, squishy putty texture while still giving that great color. When it comes to manufacturing, what are the key tips for homogenizing and pressing into goddets so the texture stays just right and the formula remains stable?
The homogenization step is there to make sure that all liquid ingredients are mixed in well. And there is also a clay in the formula to help everything stay suspended. So the homogenization step is important. And as for the pressing, in the lab, we use a press tool that we got 3D printed that is made to fit our godet size. And it almost looks like a stamp. And then we use that and place a paper towel between the godet filled with the bulk and the stamp, and then hand press it until the surface is plain and smooth. In production, the pressing of this blush would be done in a way similar to how other pressed powders are done. It's just that the pressure applied to press these would be, I think, relatively lower than compact powders or eyeshadows, or else with too much pressure, there might be a chance of the bulk just getting extruded from the godet. So some trial and errors for pressing with a powder press to find the optimum pressure would be very helpful.
That's great to know. Getting the homogenization and pressing just right really makes a difference for that squishy texture. Who do you see as the target consumer for a product like this?
Gen Z and millennials would be a good target segment for this type of product. Also, anyone who is interested in experimenting and trying out different textures, also using something out of the box, would be the target consumer.
Exactly what I was thinking. That makes total sense. Gen Z, millennials, and anyone who loves trying new things are going to be all over this fun, squishy texture. For our final question, Urmi, do you think putty or squishy texture products are going to be a bigger trend? And which are other exciting trends do you see blowing up soon?
Yes, many brands have already launched these type of squishy texture formulas, and they are not only like limited to blushes. Same type of format is seen in highlighters and bronzers and some eyeshadows as well these days. And for the new trends, Kobo is actually working on putting together our 2026 global trends, which I think is going to be very interesting and exciting. So I would ask our listeners to hold on and to look forward to that. They'll get to see new trends projected for 2026 very soon.
I love that squishy textures are expanding beyond blushes into highlighters and bronzers. And thank you for the sneak peek on Kobo's 2026 global trends. I know our listeners will be looking forward to seeing these new projections. Before we wrap up, Nick, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this formula.
Sure. I actually did get a chance to touch this formula. It's really nice. It's a very unique texture, which, like I was mentioning earlier, texture is definitely very big for our consumer. It gives you a little bit of a blur on the skin. It's just a nice subtle pop of color. Overall, I think it's something that consumers are really going to enjoy.
Thanks, Nick. And I love this formula myself. The first time I touched it, I was completely surprised by that squishy feel. It's such a fun formula. I couldn't stop putting my finger in it once I had it in my hands, but it's really cool. I just really love it. So nice job, Urmi, on that formula. And a huge thank you to you both, Nick and Urmi, for sharing your insights and taking us behind the scenes of the latest innovations in face makeup. It's been a real pleasure having you on the podcast, so thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For all those who tuned in, we appreciate you listening through and hope that you found this episode to be informative and of some value to you. Our intent is to get you inspired to create formulas such as the one just discussed. If you would like to see the complete formula and want to know more about the ingredients discussed, go back to the description of this episode where you will find links to the formulas and literature of the ingredients mentioned. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to your account managers as they are always ready to support. Also remember that on social media at Kobo Products, you will find pictures of the products and application. This podcast has been created by the content team at Kobo Products Incorporated. Kobo Products is a raw material cosmetic manufacturer and distributor specializing in treated pigments and dispersions. Be sure to follow us on Spotify and YouTube at Kobo Products Inc. or the platform of your choice so that you don't miss any episodes. Until next time, keep innovating one ingredient at a time.